I couldn't be happier and prouder to host this conversation with Federico. So let me tell you a couple of brief things about him. He graduated from here in '99, and the year after, he went back to Italy and he founded Yux. He basically, this company, 9 years after, went public and became the first tech unicorn in Italy, and was that for a while, in fact. And then he oversaw the merger with Net-a-Porter in 2015, and eventually sold the company to Richmond in a transaction that was about 6 billion, so clearly like a major success. Since 2021, he leads the Sustainable Market Initiative's Fashion Task Force at the request of King Charles III. We're going to talk a little bit about it. And he recently has published this book, which is called The Geek of Chic. And so that's also what our conversation today is going to be about. There are many fun facts in this book about Federico, so I'll tell you a couple of them. For example, he's a Dracula enthusiast and also likes to dress up as Dracula, right?
For Halloween.
For Halloween, okay. I mean, you still do, you know?
For Halloween.
I hope so, right? He started his entrepreneurial career selling Mickey Mouse comics on the beach.
Yeah.
And frankly, one of the most fun facts that stood out to me was also a gift that he gave to King Charles III for his birthday, or I don't know on which occasion.
It was the first time I met.
The first time they met.
In Scotland.
In Scotland. So a gift that he brought to the king was a toothpaste squeezer. Now I have to ask, was it gold? At least? Oh, no, okay, metallic, okay? So I mean, like, that's bold.
There's a reason, because I took a big risk to give...
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear him? Okay, good. Perfect, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Well, first of all, one round of applause. Thank you for being here.
So the reason about that gift is because a few months earlier, there was a big scandal on the British press, the Daily Mail. You know that is the British press is a little bit, they love scandals, etc. And there was this big scandal that his butler was squeezing the toothpaste for him.
Okay.
So that's
there was an insider joke.
So it was a joke that it could have been also taken in the wrong way, no?
Yes, actually.
So with this, you won't have your butler squeezing it anymore, no?
Okay.
But given that he has a lot of humor, British humor, I mean, the King of England, if he doesn't have British humor, the King of England, who does? And he laughed a lot, and so everything started. And it was like basically, I broke the ice with that gift.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And yeah, and apparently that led to a friendship that still continues today and a partnership. So we'll talk a little bit about it. So I will start with a few questions to Federico, and then we'll open it to Q&A from the audience if you have questions for him. He needs to leave at 1:40 sharp. And before he leaves, we're also going to run a lottery. And so 5 of you are going to receive a copy of the book that's already signed by Federico. Okay, so we're going to do that at some point during the event. Okay, so one first question that I have is about this title, which I really like. Is very provocative and curious in many ways. However, you know, if I think about you, you know, I remember reading about you in the magazines in Italy. He's always been associated with being this genius of logistics, plus the luxury side. So really the image of a geek or a nerd is really far from what comes to mind in terms of association. So I wanted to ask about this choice of, you know, kind of framing yourself as a nerd, you know, in the title about your life. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
I mean, first of all, the book is didn't want to be, you know, typically the entrepreneurs that have success, they write books that their company buys in thousands. My company, I already sold it, so I didn't buy any book, and I didn't do it for myself. So it's not auto-promotional, because there was no reason to promote anything, but I did it for 2 reasons. One was to leave a legacy to my daughter. I have only one daughter, and one day when she's gonna be 20, 25, etc., she will read it, and maybe she will give it to her sons, her daughters, or something to continue, no, the legacy. And the second one, which is probably more important, is to try to give some courage to the young generation, to the entrepreneurs. They wanted to be entrepreneurs. So that's why I'm going around. So I went to Stanford, Kellogg, NYU, and last but not least, Columbia, given that it's my business school, in order to try to instill some courage in going and challenge yourself and have a different perception of risk. No, because usually my colleagues at Columbia in '99, they went to Lehman, they went to Goldman, they went to McKinsey, they went to, and they were talking to me and they were saying, well, you're crazy to do a startup in Italy about technology. Technology is not the strength of Italy. In Italy, it's only about culture and humanism. Technology, you will fail, you will be jobless, won't have any money in 2 years' time, so it will be a disaster. While for 20 years, I built a company that after 20 years, it was almost $3 billion dollars in revenues, 5,500 employees. I was still there. I decided to sell. And many of my colleagues at Columbia, they got into like, I don't know, in 2008 when there was the big problem with the Lehman, etc. And so they were jobless. So it's completely different perception of risk. In my case, the risk was lower than going to Lehman or going to McKinsey because I was basically shaping my future and I was in charge of my future. I didn't depend on anybody or any market conditions or subprime scandal or whatever. And I wrote the book for this reason, to say, guys, you can take some risks. Not a problem. If you have a great idea, if you are determined, if you are passionate about your idea, you can do it. And it's not something that you will risk anything because it's better to follow your dreams rather than going to work for somebody that maybe you're not so passionate about. The reason Geek of Chic, I cannot take the the ownership of the title because it was a big piece on the New Yorker in 2013. So 8 pages on me, on my company. The New Yorker, they're very, very good journalists.
Yeah, John Seabrook, right?
John Seabrook,
the author.
Spent,
he's a great author.
Spent 1 week, author also books, etc. So he's a great writer.
He has a book that's called No Brow. It's an amazing book.
And now it's called, the latest is called The Spinach King, because now we became also friends. And he wrote these 8 pages. He spent 1 week with me going around fashion shows, home, work, business meetings. So like they're very thorough.
And he decided you're a geek after interacting with you for 7 days.
And he decided that. And I accepted it with pleasure.
You embraced it. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So you touched upon this idea of taking risk. The book also talks a lot about the role of luck, coincidences, sliding doors, and how, in a sense, maybe we can also be proactive into trying to put in ourselves in the condition to have good luck. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this concept?
Yeah, I would say that probably the fil rouge in the book is, or fil rouge in English is
conducting threat. Conducting threat, or red threat, yes. You can say.
Is about risk, courage, and pushing your boundaries, pushing also the boundaries of other people. Because many times I convinced people to do things that it was not exactly like the movie director doing the interior design of my homes that he never did in his own life. And basically the story is that if you take risks, most of the times you're going to be lucky, which is a very, very old Latin proverb from the Romans. Is Fortuna Dutch Juvent, no? You did the liceo classico.
Fortune, sì, the luck.
What is Fortuna?
Yeah, yeah,
Bravo.
exactly. Yes.
Bravo. Thank you.
That's the translation of the book that I was trying to remember.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, in my case, I really pushed my luck many, many times. I mean, with the merger, I mean, I invented the merger with Net-a-Porter. Net-a-Porter was my biggest competitor, British, as big as my company, going more or less into the same direction, competing every year. 1 year I was bigger, 1 year I was bigger. So, and I said, I want to buy it. So with competition, you can decide so many things. You can decide to try to win. You can decide to buy it. And it was such a difficult transaction. I tried 2 times and it didn't work. But really, until the very, very end, I was about to sign the contract and then everything finished because the big boss decided that he didn't want to do it anymore at the very, very last minute. So twice. But I was very persistent and I tried for the third time. And which is funny because in Italy, which sometimes we're a bit pessimistic, we say non c'è due senza tre, which is if you fail twice, you're going to fail for the third time.
I mean, it could also be you're successful twice, right? And you're successful 3 times.
Yes.
This is a negative take on the, right?
But in my case, given that I failed twice.
Okay, you thought it's coming. Okay.
It's coming another time.
I see.
In what I wrote to the book, it was on the positive side.
Yes.
And while the British, they say third time lucky, which is very positive.
Yeah, third times is the charm, right? Yeah. Third time is the charm.
So I said, okay, let's follow the British, even if I'm Italian. And I tried for the third time after, like, it was like a long process. It was, I think, 4 years or 5 years. They did trying to merge with Net-a-Porter. And it happened. So it was really like, so these, like many other little anecdotes that I tell in the book, like the toothpaste squeezer, or, I mean, so many. I really pushed my luck all the time. And I have to say that I've been very lucky because most of the times it worked. So that's why the perception of risk sometimes is, I think it's wrong. Sometimes you need to take risks, even if you think that they are too big risks, but maybe they're not. So that's more or less, in my case, for 20 years of hard work. That's, I mean, obviously there was a lot of hard work. I mean, I studied a lot, Columbia, Bocconi, blah, blah, blah. So like, I did a lot of work. So it was not just luck. But I think it's important for you to know that sometimes risks are over, how do you say, I mean, you think too much of a risk, and sometimes it's not.
And kind of connected to this idea of being an entrepreneur, and so taking risk. In the book, you also say that if you want to do it, and this matters for students, you should do it early on in your life.
Yeah.
Especially, you say, before 30. Why would you say that? Why would you recommend, young people to do it like now and right now rather than kind of wait later on when you have more wisdom as a business person?
Because again, it's about risks in the sense that if I was waiting too long, so let's say, so my daughter was born that I was 42. And definitely the energy that I had after the business school when I was 29 to set up and to do the startup is very different. So if you need to work around the clock and if you need to work like for 15 hours per day during the startup phase, one thing is if you are 29, one thing is if you are 42, you have a daughter at home, you have a wife, so you have to find a different balance of life, between work and family. And so I think that there are times where this perception, this risk, you are less favorable to take risks. So I think that the best time is when you are around 29, 30, and you're about still to understand what you want to do in life, and you're still probably, you don't have so many kids around you, and because it's important also to spend time with the kids. And so in fact, on the first 10 years of my life, I was fully devoted to my company, and I built it from scratch. Imagine, like in Italy, up in technology, which is, was a miracle. And if I had a different focus, I don't think I would have been so successful.
Thank you. So since we're talking about Yux and this startup, it's clear in the book that you saw the potential of the World Wide Web while it still was an infant technology, and you thought about putting together with luxury goods and the luxury industry. So you saw the potential about merging these two sectors, let's say, one technology and a sector. Today, in the last 2-3 years, we have witnessed the explosion of another technology that's like LLMs and AI. What are the analogy that you see when you were a student and the World Wide Web was getting traction, and today the differences with AI, and also what does it mean for entrepreneurs now that our company is maybe more, they're expecting that AI will be a revolution and therefore they're going to be more open to embracing it? Or, because for the World Wide Web, he kind of had to sell it, to companies that, guys, this is about to happen, it's going to be a revolution. And he managed to convince them to open themselves to the online world. I'm not sure if today's companies are going to be as reluctant, to embrace big technology changes. So
it's a very good question. Now everybody here in this class, I'm sure that you bought something online.
They're probably buying it now,
No, a sweater or like a suit, jumper, a pair of jeans. In '99, when I started, no one was buying fashion online. No one. Didn't exist fashion online in '99, especially luxury fashion. Maybe like probably jeans in America, Gap, maybe it was existing. But luxury fashion, there was no offer. And that's why the New York Times called me the man who put fashion on the net. So that's, let's say, I have a few nicknames. The New York Times, the man who put fashion on the net. King Charles calls me his Italian secret weapon because I'm a doer, and so I'm an action man. He loves action, and I'm actually doing many projects on his behalf that are very concrete and tangible projects. And Mr. Cucinelli, who is like a designer, Brunello Cucinelli, some of you know him, defines me a philanthropist industrialist. So I do philanthropy for companies. So I have many nicknames, but this is to say that, sorry, I forgot the question.
AI compared to the World Wide Web.
So no one was selling fashion online. And so I had to convince all the brands from scratch that, but it was better. It was better for me because they were not focused on digital. And so I could approach them and say, why don't you do a test? And for many, many years, they didn't know what was happening. So they had only like websites, information websites. So like, I don't know, the page of Armani, the page of Valentino, but with no e-commerce. And they realized that it was going to be a big business only probably 10 years later. So around 2008 to 2009, they started to say, maybe this company, Yux, is selling so much. So maybe we should do it also on our own. And in fact, in 2005, I invented an innovation within the innovation, which was powered by Yux, all the online flagship stores. So from Valentino.com, powered by Yux, Armani.com, powered by Yux, BottegaVeneta.com, powered by Yux. So basically, I did 40 of them. So YOUX was the platform for logistics, customer care, and invisible partner of all the brands. So imagine 40 of them. They were basically the probability of a customer around the world to buy luxury from 2000 to 2020, most of the times they were buying luxury from me, from my companies. And now with AI is probably different because now, but I was speaking about this later. I think the fashion industry will be impacted, like every industry, but it will take time. It won't be immediate. The luxury fashion, it will take more time because it's an industry that is not very technology oriented, not very data oriented. More about emotions, is more about creativity. It's still like that.
So, do you think that this means there could be opportunities for entrepreneurs to kind of play the role you did, back then,
Yes.
today?
I mean, definitely, I wouldn't go into e-commerce for fashion because it's the most crowded industry ever. So, like, forget about it. So don't go because it's too many players. AI could be something, but it's probably a bit too early because timing also is very important. Timing when you start something, no, it needs to be not too late, but also not too early. So I started in 99, 2000. That was basically the beginning of e-commerce. AI for fashion, I think, is still a bit premature. I would go more into sustainability for fashion. It's definitely an industry where there's a lot to do, and it's happening. So all the projects that I'm doing on behalf of King Charles III around sustainability for fashion, they are amazing projects. And if I were an entrepreneur again and not doing just for good and just pro bono, I would say, oh my God, this regenerative agriculture in Puglia is making so much money for our money that maybe in 10 years' time, 50% of the supply chain will be done by regenerative cotton. So it is an opportunity.
Yeah.
There's a big opportunity to do things also for sustainable fashion.
I'm very glad to hear it because a few students that are here are in my sustainability course, and these are the things we kind of talk about. So it's nice to hear.
I can tell you briefly about.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that he, as a kind of not a spin-off, but a big project of YOUX was Yuxigen, which was founded in 2008, which frankly was yet again kind of a pioneer in the sense of putting luxury and sustainability together. Back then was really at the forefront. Nowadays, many companies, in fact, almost most companies try to make an effort to get into sustainability, but back then it was a pioneering effort. Yuxigen, by the way, is a genius brand name. I don't know if you had it, the Yuxigen. Okay,
So
but
it's like the Geek of Chic. It's not.
Oh, you borrowed it. Okay,
I borrowed it from an intern that she was doing. She was doing an
Yuxigen,
but I asked her. It's not that I stole it. And an intern. She was doing an internship at YOUX that summer, and she came up with Yuxigen. I said, "Fantastic! Let's use this name. Are you happy if we use this name?" Yes.
Or, they started talking about vintage. Now vintage is very trendy and popular, but back then it wasn't. So, right, they were, yes. So very, very early on. And you continue, right, to this day with the task force, with the King. So, yeah, why don't you tell us about, you told us about regenerative agriculture. You're working on product passports, right? So that's also another big initiative. Or whatever. Do you want to tell us a couple of the projects you're working on?
Yeah, I will tell you one, which is at least... So when the King asked me to put together this fashion task force on his behalf, it was 2021. I think, 5 years ago. Yeah. And so I invited all the brands that I've been working with in the last 20 years. So it was very easy for me to put together. So it was not a big effort. I just called them and said, like, would you like to come in this task force? And I used the name of the King and everybody. So it was not like that I was such a genius to do it. And but I gave two ambitions to all the members. One was about the digital passport. So basically, each item will with a passport in order to give the customers, the final consumers, all the information about that particular item, so they could make responsible choices. Because if they have the information, they can make responsible choices. If they don't have the information, they don't know what they're buying. And also for reselling, etc. And on the other side, the regenerative agriculture, which is like basically on the material, so organic material to make it simple. So one very close to the customer, one very close to the soil. So at the extremes of the supply chain. So everything starts with the material. So everything starts from the cotton or cashmere or silk, and then it gets into the shops close to the customers. And obviously, like we are at the extremes of the supply chain. And my, let's call it vision, even if it's probably too big of a name, was that these two things that I gave in 2021 to all the members of the task force, they were going to converge. So basically, doing items, apparel, whatever, with regenerative materials. Regenerative means more than organic. Regenerative means that you have, I don't know, cotton plants where you put almond trees, cotton plant, no pesticides, no fertilizers, nothing, and the soil gets regenerated rather than getting
Depleted.
Depleted. Thank you. And now also with the price of the oil, no, during this wartime, because that's what I can call it, it's even more important to go this way because all the materials, most of the materials are made with oil. They're a sub-product of oil. So can you imagine if the price of oil goes like this, also the fashion industry, they need to find a different way, which is, it's very unfortunate, but in terms of sustainability, this push the brands to find a different kind of materials. And so with Armani, which, it's a company that I know since a long time, I speak in the book. The true story, I said it in the book, I never said before. I was the boyfriend of Roberto Armani long time ago in 1994 for 2 years. And then I met with Mr. Giorgio Armani, and then he asked me to go and to work for them. I said no, because I didn't want to mix personal with business. But then I kept in touch, and then basically there was a kind of mutual respect. And I'm in the board of Armani also now. Like after he passed, he died in September. So I'm in the middle of the succession. A lot of stories about that, which I don't talk in the book. And so I convinced them to start a plantation of cotton in the southern of Italy, Puglia, that they haven't seen cotton in the last 60 years because they had the plantation of cotton, but they were replaced by polyester. So all these materials that they were made exactly with oil. So now they have a plantation of organic regenerative cotton in Puglia, and they have the digital passport. And so after 2 years that I've invented this project in terms of in Puglia. In the shops of Armani, you can find products made with regenerative cotton coming from Puglia, and with the digital passport that show to the customers exactly all the story. So all the science behind it. You see the pictures and the videos about these plantations. So basically, we were inviting the customers to be part of the story and to know everything about that particular item. And the very, very good story, because this could have been a disaster, could have been a big failure, because it's an experiment. It didn't exist before. So it could have been that the quality of the regenerative cotton was terrible. So we were not being able to use it to produce T-shirts or shirts or whatever. Could have been that the customers couldn't care less. So like going into the shop with this dealer, no, I don't want to buy that thing. I wanted to buy the one made
regular, yeah,
by polyester. So it could have been a big failure. So I have to say that thanks to their money management that they decided to take this risk again. It turned out to be that product the best seller of their money collection. So the market demand about these products is amazing, which means that we went from 1 hectare to 5 hectare, from 5 hectare to 20 hectare, from 20 hectares, hopefully we'll go to 100 hectares. From 100 hectares, we'll go to 500 hectares, which means that maybe in 10 years' time, 50% of the supply chain of this big brand will be made by regenerative cotton.
So how did you make the sustainability collection desirable compared, to the regular pieces? Was it just genuine demand? So just giving prominent, making sustainability prominent.
Yes, basically through the digital passport, giving the information to the customers that they enter into the stores and they know everything about that particular item. There was not, actually, it could have been even more successful because Armani, they decided not to do any advertising, just to take it low profile, step by step. So it was really like a customer choice.
You're famous for being, the person who brought fashion online. I think one aspect that's not talked about as much is that also, in a sense, you lower the price point of many luxury goods and made it also more accessible because one feature of you, now we're going back to Yukes. So I don't think you not only like brought luxury online, but I also think you made it very accessible. And I don't know about you, but I have this heuristic that luxury goods and price promotion don't go very well together. And when I start seeing high-end brands on promotion, to me, in a little bit is the beginning of the end, even though there are very successful cases. So yes, I was curious about your opinion. What do you think about selling luxury at a discount?
It was, as I said before, it was year 1999, 2000. So they didn't know anything about the internet. So that's why I said it was even better.
So you tricked them.
I tricked them.
To better price promotion. Okay.
In a way, I mean, I was just, like in a niche market. They didn't know anything about it. But with a good proposition, though. I tricked them, but not in a bad way. Because with the Yukes, I tried to elevate the brand rather than devaluing the brand. So basically, I didn't put, for example, the saving in the price. It was a Yukes price.
Yes.
And even if we had an implied discount of, I don't know, 30, 40, 50%, we didn't show it.
Yeah.
We tried to mix a lot of art with design, with projects, with emerging designers, vintage, mentioned. So it was more a cultural project.
And I think this comes up a lot in the book, and I think can be a learning. He didn't just, put luxury online. There's really this fixation to make it in a way that's just beautiful and that just makes navigating through this website an incredible experience. That's just like good. So it's not just a matter of accessibility and discount. It's also a matter of like a beautiful and aesthetically pleasing experience. That was a fixation, right?
Yeah,
that you had.
Fixation. And every marketing manager that I hired, sometimes I fired, they were coming to my office and say, Federico, after 2 months that they were in the company, they were saying, Federico, I have a great idea. Let's show the saving.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, decided
with the price. I said, no, I don't want to show because the main proposition is not about the discount. The main proposition is about good fashion never dies. If the product is made of high quality, why can't you wear it for 3 years? Why you need to change it every 6 months? Why do you need to change every 3 weeks like fast fashion? So that was the proposition, which was very sustainable at the time.
It's 100% sustainable. I have a paper on this topic.
But I didn't think about sustainability in 2000. It was just a business model. Now, looking back and say, wow, I was already sustainable, but I didn't do it on purpose. I have to admit it. And now, I mean, in terms of prices, I mean, I feel that the luxury goods, they've gone nuts in the sense that the prices are insane. So I really don't understand what's going on. And actually, what's going on in the industry that most of them, they're struggling, is their fault because they raised the prices too much.
Mm-hmm.
In 2010, I don't know, a Gucci bag could, I mean, a normal kind of a mid manager working in a bank could afford two bags per year of Gucci. Now, like 5,000, they cost $5,000.
Yeah.
So I think that they tried too much to go to that niche, but that niche is very, it's very
ultra wealthy, right?
Yeah.
Net worth. Yeah. So yeah,
So
yeah. There's a fixation on that.
maybe like they say, okay, rather than buying.
But they move a lot of volume, right? And sales. So in a sense, they're focusing on that. But I share the intuition that you have. So curiosity, what do you think is a luxury brand that, in your opinion, is very well managed? A luxury brand that you always look like, this is an extremely well managed luxury brand. I'm curious.
I still think Prada is very
Prada,
well managed.
you would say?
Not because it's part of my task force, but because they've done a few steps that I think they're very smart.
Mhm.
First, they hired a designer, Raf Simons, together with Miuccia Prada.
Yeah.
So basically they already have the succession, which is smart.
Yeah, yeah.
Second, the husband of Miuccia Prada is a very, very commercial guy. I mean, super smart with product and commerciality and etc. So like that, they know what they're doing. Now they bought also Versace. So I think they are a smart company. They're a smart company in terms of. And then they are the CEO that is training the son of Bertelli to become the future CEO. So there's a lot of reasoning about the
Thinking
future.
about the future.
While many other companies, they don't have these.
Mhm. I have two more questions and then we'll open it to the audience. One, I mean, maybe this is a bit personal. In the book, it's obvious that you have a very strong ambition and this very strong drive. There are these sentences I feel the world is too small for me. Throughout my life, I've been obsessed about doing things well, getting to the top, never following anyone. And it's very strong phrases. And I read them and I was like, I mean, I'm obviously impressed by this level of ambition. But then I was like, can you ever be truly happy if you have such a strong drive, that pushes you always? So that's my question. It's it's a tough one. It's deep. But I mean, on the one hand, I was
the professor at Columbia. She needs to ask me questions. No? And this one is good as well. I mean, first of all, I'm coming from a very, very humble and simple family from a small town in the northeast of Italy, and they didn't know anything about fashion. They didn't know anything about technology. They didn't know anything about university because they didn't go to the university. So basically, in a way, I did it my way. No, so and to do that, you needed to have a strong drive because you're coming from a small town with no help, no recommendations, no one giving you the money to do your own company. So looking for money, going to the brands, convincing the brands. So if you don't have a strong drive, you won't do it possible.
Yeah.
So I think that at the same time, I have to admit and think about it that now that actually I left my company. So I sold it in 2018 for a decent amount of money. I left in early 2021 simply because we shook hands with the owner of Richemont Cartier. I said, I can stay until the end of my contract, but don't rely on me because I'm not a manager, I'm an entrepreneur, so I cannot stay into your corporate world. I cannot resist cannot go to the CFO to ask for 5 million more in advertising, that goes to the CEO, that goes to the owner, and it takes 6 months. I'm used to take decisions like this, and I can make mistakes, but I want to take decisions. So I said, don't rely on me after the expiration of my contract, and this is exactly what happened. So I left in 2021, and I thought that I was going to half retire in a way, no? So like enjoy my family, enjoy my daughter, spend more time with my daughter. That she was 9 at the time, and focus only on things that I really liked. It turned out to be that I'm sometimes busier now than before because with the king, that it gives me so much work.
Keeps you busy, the king.
The king keeps me very, very busy. The Italian secret weapon. And now I'm not making any money. So everything I'm doing, I'm doing for the next generation, for the planet, to help companies, to help people. Some mentorship also for young entrepreneurs. Not so many because I don't have so much time, but I still do that. So I'm making zero. But if you ask me about happiness, because that was the question, I have to say that probably now the second part of my life, which is this one, not the philanthropist, I'm happier than before because I found a lot of happiness also in helping people, and which is also something that it could be also a career. I would say. Obviously, it's easy to say it after you sell a company for 6 billion. I understand. But at the same time, I could have done a completely different choice. Now I could have said, okay, let's do another company, or let's become the CEO of Caring. Let's become, and I got also a couple of offers, but I said, no way, I'm gonna be the CEO and working for somebody else. I prefer to help people and to help the planet.
So if you're looking for an opportunity, I saw that you taught a course at Bocconi, which was his university, about creating a startup in the sustainable digital economy.
Helping people.
Helping people.
Students, next generation.
Yeah, so why don't you do it also for Columbia? Why don't you come here to teach? I've been asking him already. Now I'm asking in front of the students, so he cannot say no.
Because I don't.
I'm just teasing.
Because I don't live in New York.
Whenever you want, you're welcome.
Thank
we can do it together. All right, the last question, and then we can open it for questions for you. And we're going to do our lottery. So at some point in the book, you say that you've encountered one of the co-founders of Netflix, and you told him about an idea, a TV series on fashion.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, what was the idea about? You said you're still thinking about it. Was it like kind of Emily in Paris kind of a thing?
No, it was not so precise.
Okay.
Yeah. But as you know, there are not so many good examples of movies about European fashion. I mean, House of Gucci.
Oh, terrible movie.
Was disgusting.
Yes, terrible. Goodness. All that money, all those actors.
There's a movie by Woody Allen about maybe
A Midnight in Rome. No, that's in Paris. When they come to Rome, yeah.
So because usually like they play with the Italian stereotypes, which I mean it's true that we have many stereotypes. I mean like I don't have to repeat the stereotypes about Italians. But I think that it would be better to have an insider view of fashion rather than from outside, because you know more. I mean, I've been an outsider of fashion, but who became an insider in a way, no? And so that was my idea, but it's still there in a drawer.
I mean, maybe you'll convince Guadagnino to do it. He could be the right person, but. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So why don't we open it for questions, and maybe in the meantime I'll get the names of the lucky ones who got the...
So when you ask the question, please tell your name and
speak loud.
What you do.
So we can all hear it.
So you're all from business school here, all of you?
Some are undergrad students in my course.
So if you tell me just this, I'm business school, I'm studying arts, or I'm studying architecture, I'm studying...
You can do it.
Anything. Who's gonna decide which? Me?
You do it, yeah.
I do it.
You're the boss.
I think he raised the hand as a first.
First of all, thank you so much. I think it's an honor. I'm Enrico, Italian. I'm part of the business school. Probably this question has been asked to you in other occasions, but I really wanted to understand, why do you think you made it? I mean, I'm Italian. I know that the business ecosystem in Italy, the startup ecosystem, never really worked. And you're probably one of the unique example of someone who made it, I would say, the American way. Like, he built a successful company in the dot-com era, sold it, successful exit. And after you probably never really worked. Now the ecosystem, it seems that is improving a bit, but yet we are very, very, very far behind. So do you think you're just better than anyone else in Italy?
No.
Or like,
It's a
do you think
combination.
it's not working? And would you actually recommend, I don't know, for example, to me, I'm Italian, of course, I love Italy, as all the classic stereotypes. Would you recommend to go back and try to entrepreneur in Italy, or stay outside?
I mean, the reason is probably a combination of many things. Now, as I said, taking risks, courage, determination, good vision about the future, being brave, being lucky. In the book, I say that I've been lucky also. Kind of a miracle what I did in Italy. There's no one reason, one specific reason. It's a combination of things. It's probably everything in life, no? But my suggestion for you is, definitely, in my case, to go back to Italy, to my country, was the right decision, because I was one of the very few with this idea of startup, internet technology, etc. If I was staying here in America, probably I would have been one of many. And in the end, it's all about competition. It's all about how crowded is the environment, and it's better sometimes to be one of the few than one of many. So I think there are definitely many opportunities for people that they are very well trained in America, like people coming from Columbia Business School, like many other business schools, to go back to Italy and to do something good. So I would encourage you to go back. Like, mostly the Chinese, no? If I'm not wrong, is there any Chinese here? So are you going back to China? Okay, I'm sorry. But correct me if I'm wrong. Many Chinese, they study abroad. For example, my daughter is studying at Brighton, and there are many Chinese, but then they go back to China to help the country. And they are called like the turtles, no?
Yeah, it's called, it translates into like sea turtle, but it means like someone who goes back home after being born.
So there's a lot of focus on education in China, no? People getting the best education abroad and going back. So I think if you wanted to serve your country, you should go back. Let's do man, woman, man, woman.
So I had quite a similar question.
So your name?
Sorry. I'm Camilla. I'm from the business school. I lived in Italy, so I'm proud Italian.
So you're Italian too?
Yes.
Okay.
Not even Italian. To me, it's like a bit more deep dive into what exactly were the challenges that you had to encounter when opening a startup in Italy. Because I know that the ecosystem, as Enrico was suggesting, it's a bit flawed, but especially focusing on the side of raising capital. Because I know that, like, for example, we were saying in America, you would be one of many, which is also very true. And I could see why maybe like a startup like this might have been much more efficient in Italy, also due to their relationship with the fashion world. But to me, what is striking in how could you actually raise capital in a scenario where now people are not able to do so because the VC in Italy is super small.
Yeah, but money is very liquid. So, for example, I raised money from Benchmark Capital, which is the 2003, which is one of the most famous venture capitalists in America. money can go around the world. But being in Italy helped me with the relationship with the brands, like a cultural proximity, um, understanding each other. So for me, definitely there were many disadvantages. Bureaucracy. I remember when I started in 2000, it was so difficult to get the mayor of Bologna to connect the warehouse with the
Cable.
with the cable. So it was my first challenge, that we were waiting, like that they were putting the cable. I mean, terrible, but also many advantages. So I think that I wouldn't be scared about the difficulties, because you can overcome the difficulty. And in my case, the balance has always been in favor. And money is true. I mean, in Italy, the venture capitalists barely exist. I was very lucky to find the first and the only true venture capital in Italy, that was called Mr. Serino Piol, coming from Olivetti, that he gave me the first 1.5 million to start, just on the basis of a PowerPoint presentation. So it was in February 2000. But at the same time, you can find money also, like from here. You can find money from London. You can find money from France. So, as I said, money comes if you have a good idea, if you have a good team. Very important, because in my book I speak a lot about the importance of the team. I speak about one guy that I think I wrote that if he wasn't with me, the company would have been half in terms of the size. I think money will come easily, not a problem. Men, woman, men.
Hi, my name is Satrio. I'm from Indonesia. You mentioned that you find more happiness in your second act of being a philanthropist rather than being a CEO. So, for those of us who have just started our first act, is it possible to build a sustainable generational mission into a company's DNA since day one? Or is that luxury that only comes after?
No, it's possible. It's possible, especially it's possible. The answer is absolutely it's possible. And I would start with more than with the philanthropy, which, I mean, at the beginning it's not easy to incorporate in a business that is new. But I would start with something that is not exactly the same, but is very important, which is ethics. So even having foundations and values around ethics is super important, and this would give you a lot of pleasure rather than cutting corners, no, especially with the customers. So this is very important. So you can incorporate ethics from day one.
So maybe I'll read the names of the lucky ones, and then we take one last question, and we let you go since I know you're pressed for time. So
yeah, I'm sorry, but I need to go because my daughter, she decided to do, and that's why I'm in New York. She decided to do a 5-day internship at the UN, and she found this internship through friends at the tennis camp this summer, not coming from me. And she's entering the UN at 2 o'clock. Unfortunately, exactly at the same time. So I have a car at 1:45 downstairs. I jump into the car because I'll try to take a picture of her getting into the UN.
that's very sweet. Yeah, he talks about his daughter also in the book. It's very sweet. So Sofia Zhao, I guess she's not here. Tana Tangria, Leslie Noy. Okay, you got it. Enrico De Luca. Enrico, you got it. Amalia. Omo. Soyung. Liu. Elisha. Malik. They signed up but didn't come. Malik. Kirthika. Okay, so we're 5, right? Yeah. So you guys are the lucky ones.
Thank you.
So you have your copies there. Maybe one last question, brief, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, for the people who read my book, I would love, because I've always been interactive. I mean, given also my digital background, I really would love if you write me your feedback on my Instagram. I have no social media manager, and I reply myself. And you tell me I really like it, or I really hate it, or I like this part, I didn't like this part. So please give me the feedback, because I love feedback.
Maybe one last question, brief.
We did the man, so we are woman.
Thank you so much for this presentation and talk. It was very inspiring.
Honest. It was very honest.
It was very honest. So my name is Salome. I'm from Georgia. I work for the UN and doing climate finance.
Oh, wow.
So my question is regarding sustainability aspect of your work, and during all the backlash that is with regard to holidays, how do you think the fashion industry that it's not only US, it's global not going well for the sustainability in general.
Yeah.
So
No, and I understand the question, and probably it not only about fashion. No, sustainability was very trendy a few years ago. In a way, there was this hype about sustainability. Everybody was talking about sustainability,
Net zero,
net zero, etc. Then, with the many changes in the administration, etc., like sustainability became like something not good anymore. But my view is that it's now that, I don't know, like for example, there are many people that say we need to change the narrative. So let's not call it sustainability anymore. Let's call it environmental friendly or climate. I mean, they wanted to change the name because sustainability is not cool anymore. I think it's exactly the time where you need to push the accelerator, because if everybody is going back, it's better rather than everybody talking about sustainability, because then it will become so crowded. Now that everybody is basically making one step back, it's very good that you make one step ahead. Because in the end, it's all about that. No, like it's important to be different. It's important to come up with ideas that no one is doing in the end. No, if you want to be an entrepreneur, and also if you want to help the planet. So in my case, in terms of the fashion brands that are part of the task force that I chair, we are accelerating rather than decelerating, and actually, given the customer feedback that I told you before, no, with the regenerative cotton, it's time to accelerate, because maybe we'll find ourselves in 5 years that we have a huge competitive advantage compared to all other brands that they are decelerating. And in the end, it's all about the competitive advantage.
I really like this message. So let's close on this one. It's a very positive
Thank
note.
you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. Ci facciamo una foto?
Sì, volentieri.